Starfield is almost here, and I was lucky enough to get early access from Bethesda, and I've put dozens of hours into this game. So I want to share my experience with you guys so far, and just know there's certain things I can't talk about, so obviously I won't be talking about those. And I'm not going to spoil this game for you. This is what I would call a no spoilers preview, no specifics into what's going on with this story, any secrets that I think are better, discovered on your own. I'm not going to be doing that in this video. I'm also going to divide this into sections and give you guys very clear timestamps in the description. If you want to hop around, I'm going to hit a ton of topics. I really want to cover as much as possible and get to your burning questions on what Starfield is. How does this game play? Is it buggy? So on and so forth. I want to kick this off with some disclaimers because there's a lot being said about Starfield that I've watched over the last 2 weeks, and I think it's, good to lay down some ground rules about what you can expect from this game. I made a video called What You Should Actually Expect from Starfield. That was before I got my hands on the game. And the whole point of that video was to say that Starfield's going to be a Bethesda game. It's going to be a game in the vein of Morrowind, of Oblivion, of Skyrim, of Fallout 3, and Fallout 4. And honestly, guys, I think I was right on the money with that, because the moment you pick up this game, even from the intro sequence to how mechanics are introduced to the UI, the menus, a lot of this stuff, if you played a Bethesda game before, this is all going to be very familiar. It's so familiar to the point that I was kind of laughing through these tutorials because I was like, yeah, no, I already know how all of this stuff works. I mean, just take a look at outpost building. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like to talk to your companions and trade gear with them. This is what it looks like to pause and access your inventory and sort through it. I mean, you've definitely seen this before. Now, to me, this felt like a good thing. I think you could look at this and think this is too familiar, but I felt kind of right at home with this. I felt comfortable. There was less of a learning curve with this game because I was already familiar with all of this stuff. At the same time, I think you'll recognize after playing for 5 to 10 hours that this is very much a new game for Bethesda because there's many things going on here that we've never seen them do before. The scale, for example, this is an absolutely massive game. In fact, I wrote down on my notes that this may be the biggest 3D game we've ever seen before, just in sheer scale. I can't even sit down and tell you even a projection, an estimate of how long the game is. I think it's many hundred hours long. I mean, who knows how long it'll take to do absolutely everything. I mean, that really is how big the game is. This game also has a level of detail that I was not expecting. I mean, with this many indoors interiors on separate planets, I was expecting a lot of copy-paste going on. I've seen the exact same layout of a location only once, and that's the mining outpost. I've visited several mining outposts that look exactly the same. They have objects in the same places, but that's it. Every single other place I've been to has been a unique location, and it's kind of blowing my mind. So I think your biggest takeaway here should be, this is a Bethesda game in a new setting. That setting just so happens to be space, and so there's a lot of different mechanics that are sort of re-engineered around being a space game. But what you should expect is Bethesda in space. The next thing I want to touch on is bugs. And guys, I don't think there's been a more polished Bethesda game on launch. Now, you may hear that and laugh, but there's no greater show of confidence than giving access to this game 14 days early. I mean, they were confident in this thing, and it shows. And that's reflected in what I've been playing. I mean, bugs are few and far between. They are harmless. I mean, you'll see someone get stuck on an object for a second, and then it'll go away. I had one issue where my ship disappeared, but what did I do? I went to my autosave, reloaded it, and the problem was fixed. I think it's safe to say that that 2022 delay was absolutely needed and 100% paid off. I mean, this thing truly, for how big it is and how much you can do, it's pretty shocking how few issues there are, at least issues that I've run into from my experience. So to everyone saying this was gonna flop because it was a buggy mess,
you sure about that? You sure about that?
And one final disclaimer that this is going to be an empty, lifeless, and boring video game. And that procedural generation being used is going to, cheapen the experience. Like, it's not going to feel authentic or hand-touched. I can say that I certainly haven't been bored so far. In fact, if anything, I'm almost overwhelmed by how much is going on in this game. I mean, there's really so many things you could do at any moment in time. Like, once you get the frontier, you get the keys to the starship, it's whatever you want to do. Anything goes. works. It's also not lifeless or empty. I mean, there are certainly moons that I've visited where there's nothing really going on, maybe like a mining outpost. There's some resources you can mine and maybe a few planet traits that you need to scan. But it's not like where you go is constantly empty and lifeless. Like all of the content happens around places where there's clearly life. There's stuff going on. There's an interesting quest line that you're following. There are named NPCs with whole backstories and tons of questions that you can ask them. I haven't visited a single planet where there's been no human activity. Now, that could be because I haven't like spread out really far across the settled systems because my grab drive isn't big enough yet. But yeah, in no way are you playing this game and being like, wow, there's nothing going on. Like there is constantly content, constantly interesting things drawing your eye, and if you're like me, distracting you away from whatever you thought you were doing in the first place. For example, I landed on this planet to do some light exploration. I found one of the planetary traits, which is these gravitational fields. And I stumbled upon this guy who needed some help getting back to his ship. He was injured, so I decided to do that, and I ran him all the way back to his ship. Once we got there, I talked to him. He asked me, you know, like, what do you want for this, dude? And I said credits. So he gave me some credits, and then in the background of that same scene, this happened.
Adventure for one lifetime.
So yeah, I don't know how often this is, but like this is a dynamic world here. You're not locked into a cutscene when you're talking to people. Like stuff can happen in the background, crazy, wacky stuff like this that'll make you laugh. All right, so let's dive into my first impressions. And since we're talking about exploration, this was something that I tested very early on, and I just kind of want to get out of the way. What are the limits on exploration? What can you actually do on every single planet? Can you circumnavigate a planet? Can you fly from one planet to another without a cutscene? It was already confirmed to us that we could not go from orbit to surface, so you cannot manually fly your ship from outer space onto the surface of a planet. This is how it works. When you come across a planet, you'll be in its orbit, and then you can select it and then open the planet map. From this screen, you can scan the planet to see what kind of resources are there. You can also look at different points of interest that may or may not be on that planet and decide to land there. And you get to manually choose a landing spot. And you'll see when you choose it, it'll give you a certain biome. So you know exactly, or not exactly, but you know kind of what to expect when you land there. Once you decide to land at that spot, you click land, and then there's a small cutscene showing your ship landing on the planet. Now at that point, you can open up your map, and it's called the surface map. And this gives you like a very rough sketch of what's going on, like very minor sort of elevation looking stuff, and then also the points of interest that are within your range. Now, can you just land somewhere and walk all the way around the planet? The answer is no. I tried this. I went up to a barrier that said, you need to pick a different landing spot. But bear in mind, that took me like 5 minutes, I think, from my ship of just straight sprinting and jumping in 0G to hit that barrier. And all that time, I crossed a bunch of things that I could have done. So the more I played this game, the more I've been curious about this and tested it. So on a single planet, I think I had something like 5 or 6 different landing spots. And each one of those landing spots had their own generated map with its own terrain, its own points of interest, and so on and so forth. So that's how planetary exploration works. But does this matter, I think, is the real important question here. And as I played more, it really doesn't. It really doesn't break my immersion to not be able to circumnavigate a planet. Number one, because it would take forever, like a really long time. And number two, it just doesn't sound that fun. So this feels like a compromise where they were like, okay, let's generate some pretty big maps in several different places on a planet, and that's how you're exploring a planet. Whether or not this bothers you, that's something you're gonna have to figure out for yourself when you play the game. But in my dozens of hours, it really doesn't bother me. Let's move on to space exploration, because there's a very similar thing happening here. When you are in space, you are around a point of interest. So that's gonna be like a planet, a moon, or a space station, something like that. But I really don't think it's possible to actually move through space. For example, I don't think you can fly from the Earth to the moon. That's just not a thing. Other space games allowed you to do this, and you could like put on your super big boy drive and like, you know, fly really fast from one planet to another, and it might take you a minute or a couple minutes depending how far it is. In this game, instead, what you do when you want to travel somewhere else is you open up your map, you zoom it out to either the system view or the galaxy view, depending on how far you want to go. You pick where you want to go, and then you click a button and you get a short cutscene, and then boom, you're there. At first, this did bother me. I was like, space is a lie. You're just in the orbit of an object. There's no actual space in space. But as I played more, I just didn't really become a factor to me. And to be honest, in those games where you can travel from planet to planet, I mean, what do we do when we're doing that? I pull out my phone and I like look at Twitter or something, you know? It's something you've seen a million times before, so it's almost like a downtime part of the game. In Starfield, they decided that's just not gonna be a thing, probably for technical reasons, but also it's not something I'm really missing at this point. I like being able to bounce between planets, and the fact that I've got this installed on an SSD means it's loading really quickly. Speaking of, the scale of this game is absolutely massive. I mean, with 1,000 planets, with a ton of different points of interest on every single one, it's like incomprehensibly large, right? Luckily, Bethesda gives you every tool necessary to let you decide how manual you want that experience to be. Like, Starfield knows how big it is, and it lets you fast travel as much or as little as you want. So if you're someone who wants immersion, you can do everything manually, and I'll show you right here. So let's say you land on a planet, and your starship is going to be physically on that planet that you've landed on no matter what. When you're done with what you're doing, you can walk up the ramp and board your ship, and then walk to the cockpit and get in your pilot seat. From there, you can manually take off, and then boom, you're in the orbit after a short loading screen. From here, you can open up your star map or use the navigation console if there is one in your ship. And, you know, just like any other galaxy map, you can find where you need to go next and chart a course. At that point, it's like I showed you guys before with planetary exploration. You choose a landing spot, you land there, you can manually get up from your chair when you've landed there and then exit via the door. So essentially what I'm trying to show you guys is you can do all of this every single time if you want to, or from any single place on any planet, unless you're like locked into a quest, you could just fast travel to a location you've already been to. Just like I'm showing you here, I've completed some big quest, I'm gonna open up my map, and then I'm gonna fast travel back to the Lodge, which is where Constellation exists in New Atlantis. Short loading screen, and then boom, I am there. Now, if you do it this way, the quick way, you do miss out on some more random events triggering. Like, I've got the wanted trait. When I made my character, I chose that. So now random bounty hunters will approach me probably like every 30 minutes to an hour. And so I'll have a fun little space fight and get some resources out of it. Any possibility of something like that happening, you're skipping it if you're not actively going through space. But it's your game. You get to choose how you want to play it. And so I just thought it was a really sort of ingenious way to approach a video game that is this massive. All this time I've been mentioning how big Starfield is. It's just massive. But the problem is that doesn't matter if what's in it sucks or it's not detailed, right? And guys, I was so impressed with how detailed, like on a very small scale, this game is for how big it is. It's kind of stupid how many random objects that they decided to place around, how many bathrooms there are in the game, how every single building you visit has like a power cable that you can follow to the outside where there's clearly like a power generator. I don't know the technical term for that, but you get what I mean. There's kitchens and refrigerators and lockers and storehouses and giant industrial machines that you can collect resources from. There's vents and catwalks and different routes through every single city that you don't really realize are there until you investigate further. I mean, there is just a stupid amount of detail. I can't imagine the painstaking just man hours that they put into this game in order to place all of this where it is, and it all looks great. I mean, I'm playing the game in 4K, ultra settings, so pretty much as max as you can possibly get. And the detail, the textures, especially on a lot of the clothing that you'll notice when you're talking to NPCs, I mean, it is wild, guys. I just think looking at it, watching my video is the best way for you to see, or playing it yourself, of course. I'm gonna show you guys two examples of how this world feels very lived in. Number one is this giant kids area in Aquila City. There's kids running around. There's like a little deputy girl that wants you, to be a Freestar Ranger, and I won't spoil that for you, but this is like a kid's playground. There's a soccer field here. You see kids running around it. Like, it's legit, it's real. Then you step outside of Aquila City where they tell you not to go because of the Ashta, which are these like little dingo kind of things, but they're alien that will come after you. Anyways, there's a large farm here, and you can go to this farm, and there's people working the farm, and there's robots working the farm. This is a deep cut, but if you guys have ever seen the video called Shandification explaining why Fallout New Vegas is such a great game, I believe that Starfield has Shandification. There's an overwhelming amount of life in this game, and whether it's the environmental storytelling or the people you talk to, you're gonna find it. And so it's just, it's kind of wild. I guess we should transition into cities. So I've been to 3, I think, of the biggest cities. I think there's a couple more that I haven't been to, but I've been to New Atlantis, of course. That's the first one. I've been to Aquila City, which we just looked at, and I've been to Neon, which is like the Vegas of this game. Again, stupid amounts of detail. New Atlantis is so massive, it's mind-boggling. There are several different zones you can go to via tram, and there are many different buildings that have different floors. If you thought previous Bethesda games had big cities, I've said that before, by the way, and people are like, I never thought that. Starfield has really big cities. There's also random NPCs walking around, and at first, this sort of struck me as strange. You'll see like civilian or settler or, you know, something like that. And these people, they don't look the best. Some of these NPCs you'll look at kind of reminds me of Cyberpunk. You'll be like, oh my God, I wish I didn't see that. Like, they look terrifying. But there are so many named NPCs. I would say more than any other Bethesda game by far. Like, you can really find people that have an actual personality and they're a real person. You can ask them a ton of questions and talk to them. I guess we should transition into dialogue, which is such a big part of any Bethesda game. And ever since they told us that there's no voiced protagonist, I was really happy with that decision. I just think it gives you better player agency and ability to role play. And as far as your dialogue options, like what you can say, I'm pretty pleased with what they have here. I would say it lands somewhere between Skyrim and Fallout 4, where like Skyrim, there's no voice protagonist and it kind of frees up the options, right? You can go along with what people are saying. You can ask for more information. You can straight up attack some people, which feels like really nice, really freeing if you want to be a maniac. And like Fallout 4, there's a sense of momentum with conversation. So it's not sort of like encyclopedic, I would say, like maybe you expected from a very old Bethesda game. But I don't know, like there is a surprising amount of coloring in of context and detail that you can, you know, really get into with some NPCs, like conversations that lasted way longer than I expected. Also, your traits and your background that you choose during character creation, they do factor in to what you're able to say. You'll just get a new prompt that comes up, like, since I picked Freestar Collective, like that's where my character grew up, I'm allowed to give extra context, and most of the time that pops up when I'm in the Freestar Collective space. I've had my wanted trait pop up several times, like I know a thing or two about getting in trouble with the law, and so that's something I'm able to say to certain people. I wouldn't pick up Starfield and expect a blank slate RPG. There's some knowns about you, even though there is a thing you can pick in character creation where you have zero background. Still, there is a general path that you go down for the first, I don't know, 30 minutes of the game, just like every other Bethesda game. But once you get to the keys to your ship, like I said earlier, I mean, it is anything goes. You do not have to do anything in particular after that point. I almost forgot to talk about the dialogue minigame. So this is what pops up. I think this pops up if you are persuading or intimidating, or maybe there's another option in there. You have a certain number of attempts in order to convince this person to do what you want them to do. And the better your persuasion or intimidation, the easier it is. But I've actually noticed that the options that you pick here are context-based. So it's more about reading, like, what kind of vibe is this person giving you? Like, do they seem aggressive? Are they easily intimidated? So it's more about what you're saying and the context of the quest and the situation, rather than just, is your speech this high enough in order to pass it? So I've been digging this. It's sort of like another evolution of what we've seen in previous games. Let's talk about these faces. This is a big talking point. I think a lot of people were pretty critical when Bethesda first showed off the faces, and then when they showed them off a year later, which was earlier this year, they looked better. I thought they looked improved for sure, but still, I was like, these kind of need some work. I'm pretty happy to say that a lot of the NPCs that you spend a significant amount of time talking to look great. I mean, they really do. There's some updated expressiveness, especially with the eyes and sort of wrinkles and the way their mouths move. And if you were to say that previous games only had like 6 different like emotions where NPCs would emote. This one, it's like at least doubled. I mean, there's a lot of different emotions going on in these faces. My expectation was not for this to look like The Last of Us Part 2. You know, there's no way they can make this look like just the absolute cinematic heights of faces, and they don't. But at the same time, for what we're getting at the scale, the sheer number of people, I think these look pretty solid. And you'll notice once again that the members of Constellation probably have the best facial animation. I mean, Sarah Morgan, I think, is definitely the highlight here because you can very clearly see her range of emotion on her face. I've only seen one, what I would describe a dead face, and I honestly think it was a glitch because I talked to this person, left, did a mission, came back, and then they were way more expressive. So I think there's just been a lot of care and effort put into these faces looking like humans, like realistic within a certain, expectation for how many faces you're looking at. Now let's transition to companions. I've gotten, I want to say 8 to 10 people that are officially companions. Like they can follow me around, they can carry my stuff, and you form a bond with them. And like many features I'm listing here, this just feels like another step forward for Bethesda because these are some of the most expressive and better written characters I feel in Bethesda's catalog. I mean, after a while, they'll tell you what they think and how they're feeling about the events you're going through. They'll sort of open up to you once they trust you enough. They'll like some of the things you do. They'll dislike some of the things you do. I've never had a companion just up and quit on me, so I haven't, I guess, been that evil. Generally, I think all of the companions are pretty likable except for one, Heller. I really don't like this guy. He makes really dumb mining puns, and yeah, he's just annoying. So I leave him at my outpost so I don't have to see him. Like I mentioned, you can send them to certain outposts and their skills will make your outpost better depending on what they are. You can also assign them to your ship. There's usually a certain amount of slots on your ship, and it'll give you some bonuses there too. You can only have one companion though to like truly follow you everywhere and help you in combat. And companion AI, I would say they're still pretty dumb in an expected way for a Bethesda game. This is a place I don't think they upgraded very much. They'll get stuck places. Sometimes they're just not even shooting in the middle of combat. One funny / annoying thing I've had happen with mine is whenever I go back to my outpost, I need to use the airlock to go in and out of my building, but they get stuck on the other side. And sometimes they'll try to come through and it'll lock me out and I'll have to like lock the airlock again. And it's this whole back and forth thing. Luckily, you can tell them to stay put when you get to an outpost, so they're not constantly following around. But yeah, just some goofy kind of Bethesda stuff going on there sometimes. So far, I've recruited, I think, all of the Constellation members, unless there's another one down the line, and then a few non-Constellation members. So it's not just Constellation you can recruit. And Bethesda have said there's 20 companions. I don't think I've met even half of that. So there's really plenty more to discover and meet and recruit. Moving on to outposts. Now, this is where you can create your own base. It is very familiar if you played Fallout 4 and the settlement crafting in that game. It's pretty much the same, just with tweaks that make it fit Starfield better. Generally speaking, you build structures, you can build items that create certain things, like a fabricator can create materials that you need for crafting. And you'll need power if you want to use certain, more advanced things in your outpost. But you can also build like mining operations. So basically the outpost that I built here, it has water and argon underneath the ground. And so you can use your scanner to look around and see where that is based on what's highlighted on the ground, and then find the right resources. You can build that extractor, and then boom, you're generating that resource. I think this is the part of the game that really hooked me pretty quickly, which is weird for me because I'm usually not into like settlement outpost crafting and building. But yeah, I made it my mission to spread across several different planets in the same star system and basically make mini mining outposts, and then just whenever I need iron, for example, or nickel or aluminum or helium-3, cobalt, lead, any of those essential ones, I just fast travel to that planet, pick it up from my your resource extractor, and then go on my merry way. But the sheer size of the outposts is what gets me most excited, guys. I can't imagine what people are going to make with this system. I mean, are they going to make cities, entire factories? It's kind of wild what I think is possible here. There's even robots. There's an entire ship builder with a landing pad that you can create. Obviously, there are workbenches, which if you played any of Fallout 4, that's going to be very familiar. It's the same system. However, there's one big sticking point for me with outposts, and it may be that I just haven't discovered this yet, but I swear to God, there's no way to pool all of your resources in one container. There's no master container like the workshop was in Fallout 4. So that means when you're building around your outpost, those materials you need, they have to be on your person, or else you're not able to build it. If you don't know why this is a problem, basically, it's just really tedious. You've got to sift through many containers full of items. Yes, you can, sort these perfectly, which I've tried to do myself, but it just adds a lot of busy work and time that I don't think was necessary because they already had a solution for this with the workshop in Fallout 4. Maybe there was an issue with putting infinite items into one container. Maybe it is truly a technical issue, but I don't know, that just sort of soured my outpost building experience having to do that. I'm not someone who's gonna build a really elaborate outpost, at least I haven't done it yet, but if you are someone who likes outpost and settlement building, then you're gonna love this game. There's a lot of options going on here, and it seems like you can create some really impressive stuff, so I definitely wouldn't worry about that. Now let's talk about crafting, which is pretty much related, but with one big difference from Fallout 4. So you know how Fallout 4, there was junk, and you could break junk down into different components in order to create other things? That whole system, you can throw it out. It's not in Starfield. Instead, you're mostly collecting resources that you can mine. So just think about resources on the periodic table. And then there's these very specific manufactured things that you can create. Like something that will come up a lot is the adaptive frame. That's used for a lot of structural things. This is something that you can find out in the world and just pick up every time you see it. Or you can create a machine in your outpost to create the adaptive frame. That's just one example. There's dozens of different things that you will need to craft and create or collect or buy out in the world in order to craft items in Starfield. But yeah, once you're actually crafting, you go to the spacesuit station or the weapon station. It is just like Fallout 4. Every single item that is, a piece of gear will have different mod slots, and then you'll need to have a certain amount of research level in order to actually modify these things. And the mods themselves are so similar. Some things are a little bit different because this is a different game with different contexts, but yeah, you could put a laser sight on every single weapon. You can change the scope on every single weapon. If you're talking about your armor, you can increase the ballistic resistance on your, spacesuit or your helmet. So very familiar territory there. And this goes hand in hand with the research lab. So this is sort of like a workbench, you could say, you go into, and then you spend certain resources in order to learn how to craft more things, which also cost resources. So if you're someone who likes that sort of crafting loop and, going out, gathering things, pooling them together, and then unlocking upgrades, I think this is a really satisfying, gameplay system here. But a little tip here before you do any research, pop a Synapse Alpha. It's an aid item, and it's going to reduce the amount of resources you need in order to research projects, and it lasts for 10 minutes. So it's really useful. I use one every single time I do research in my lab. Let's switch gears over to combat. Now, the best parallel for this game to me is Fallout 4, where the combat was definitely improved over previous games. You can ADS, you can move around, but the big game changer for me is this boost pack. I mean, it really does change the way that you navigate around any combat encounter, but also just exploration in general. Depending on the gravity, I can sometimes maintain a boost pack without running out of fuel for, it feels like infinitely. I did one for 2 minutes straight. It was really fun. But let's go back to combat. It's really nice because it adds a level of verticality and movement that you just did not have before. And I will say, unfortunately, I don't think the enemy AI has really kept up with that innovation because it's just kind of dumb. I mean, sometimes I'm showing you footage right now of me getting into a fight and these guys just standing there. I don't know what happened. I don't know what threw them off, but they're just not particularly smart. You feel really powerful, basically, killing anything in this game. That could be because I'm pretty much still in the infancy of my playthrough. I mean, that's how long and big this game is, but the thing that's making it really fun for me is the variety of weapons, because there are so many different really cool looking weapons. I mean, There's a large variety of weapons in this game with a lot of different designs. So you're gonna find those space western weapons like I just said, but there's also some Earth-related stuff. Like there's clearly an AK, there's an old Earth shotgun, and there's some more futuristic stuff. There's something called non-lethal particle weapons, and they just knock out your enemies. So they add like a status effect, and it'll just knock them out cold. So if you want to go for a non-lethal playthrough, I know they've said that they don't know if it's possible, but you can absolutely knock out humans with this. Of course, there's a variety of melee weapons. There's obviously the unarmed option with a particular skill that you can use. So yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of different options in combat, but what you would expect from a Bethesda game, for sure. One thing I would say, I don't know how you fix this, but there doesn't seem to be a ton of enemy variety. You're pretty much always fighting humanoids. Now, depending on their affiliation, they might be using different weapons against you, which is cool, but like you're fighting humanoids or alien wildlife, and that's pretty much it. But there doesn't seem to be something separating a lot of the enemy types that you're fighting, at least for me so far. Let's segue over to skills. Now, this just feels like a different version of what they've done before with Skyrim and Fallout 4. There are different categories of skills, and then there's some very just basic ones at the very top. And I've found that almost every single one of the skills, no matter the category along the top, are like pretty essential. Like you want to get most of these as soon as you can. But as you get further down, it requires that you have more skills spent in that category. So you need to invest in certain categories in order to get the more advanced ones, and things like building up your outpost and having like super special things in your outpost. You'll need to advance in the tech tree, for example. I've spent most of my points in tech because that's what I've wanted to get better at, and I've been able to build more interesting things in my outpost as a result. Now, on the flip side, I haven't spent any points in the combat section at all. I think it's because I've said the game's pretty easy on the normal difficulty. Now that I think about it, I don't even know if there are difficulty settings, but it's a pretty easy game. So I don't think that you'll need a ton of combat skills unless you want to like very specifically specialize into something. As far as leveling up and experience goes, very similar to what we've had before as well. The best way to get experience is to just do quests, and if those quests happen to have a lot of enemies along the way where you get small bits of XP when you get kills, then the more the merrier. But yeah, I haven't really found like an exploit or anything that would allow you to experience farm or level up quickly. Essentially just playing the game and probably even following the main path is what's going to level you up as quickly as you can, if that's what you want. Let's transition over to ships. So how does it feel to fly a ship, customize a ship, so on and so forth? At first, I had trouble flying the ship, actually. I thought it was a little complicated to bounce between the different systems. I also didn't know exactly like when I was locked on and how to aim, which sounds dumb because it's actually really simple. Like once you've got the red lock on, that means anything like a rocket launcher will automatically hit its target. But for everything else, you need to manually aim. Enemy ships have shields, so what you have to do is punch through that with your energy weapons, and then once that's down, you want to use ballistic and missiles in order to destroy that ship. Most of my ship combat has been like me versus 3 other ships, and that's from the wanted trait. So I constantly have bounty hunters showing up in space and being like, hey man, give us credits or we're gonna kill you. At first, I was getting destroyed. I remember like dying and reloading about 5 times trying to kill these guys, and then eventually I just paid them off. And then when I leveled up next time, I increased my ship shields with one of the skills. So it's just something I think you need to learn. Also, you need to just be a certain level in order to survive these conflicts. There's also some cool things you can do depending on the skills you have. So if you get a skill that's called like ship targeting systems or something like that, you can specifically destroy their engine and their grav drive so they can't escape. And then you can go up and dock on a ship and then kill everyone on the inside. And then at a certain point, you should be able to steal that ship for yourself. Now, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, I did have a glitch where I got another ship. The game was like, hey, you've got another ship. And then I landed that ship and then it just disappeared on me. So I actually, I had to reload that save. So I don't know what it feels like technically to have 2 different ships, but I know that it is certainly possible. I've only upgraded my ship a couple times, and it's been, I think, my energy weapons. I felt like I wasn't punching through enemy shields quick enough, so I did that, and I also increased the size of my engine. So I've only made a couple adjustments to my base ship, but if you want to build your own ship, this is super complicated, at least at first. There's a lot of different parts going on here. When you're crafting a ship from scratch, it's very expensive. I think Todd Howard said that early on, like, guys, building your own ship is a late game thing. He's completely right about that. I don't think you're really reasonably able to build a new ship that can compete with the Frontier, your starter ship, unless you have at least 200,000 credits. So it's really expensive. I think your best bet to have another ship early on is to steal one. But honestly, guys, I cannot wait until I can make my own ship, especially one that can fit more than 2 crew members. You can have like passengers on your ship that can just come with you and stand around in the hull or whatever the ship terminology is. But in order to like actually assign people to the ship and have them quote unquote doing things and benefit from their skills from the crew menu, you will need like bigger ships, you know, just more spaces for them to work. So yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of stuff on your ship. You can add a lot of workbenches on your ship. There's already a research lab on the Frontier, which, to be honest with you guys, I haven't even used because I keep forgetting that it's there. Now, before the game came out, I think it was Todd Howard, maybe Emil, one of the writers, who said that this is their favorite grouping of quests that they've ever made in a game. And so far, I think they might be right. I mean, there are some really memorable quests in Bethesda games, quest lines that I'll never forget. And Starfield has some of that energy. Obviously not going to spoil anything for you guys, but I've noticed a lot of smaller quests, like random chance encounters that were super interesting that brought me on paths that I was not expecting. It's really hard to say like the variability of the quests themselves because, you know, I've only played a couple dozen hours. I think that's kind of something that you figure out after an entire playthrough. Like, really, how different can this quest turn out? I don't really have the answer to that question, but in terms of like stuff that you'll immediately notice, quests are divided basically based on type. So there's activities, which are like very quick things that you'll be able to resolve pretty quickly. There's contracts, which I guess you could say feel the most like radiant quests, you know, or, you know, fetch quests. You're just going to go do something really quick and come back and you'll get your credits. I can tell you, I've only ever done one of these and I've played dozens of hours. So if you're like, nah, man, I'd rather have the narrative part of this, I want to know why I'm doing what I'm doing and not just running errands, then you don't even have to do these, which is great. Then there are what they call missions. So missions are more narrative forward things that are not main quests because there's a separate category for the main storyline. But yeah, I mean, there is a crazy variety of different quests going on. And I think the most memorable one so far, I won't tell you where it is or how you get it, but I started off by being a coffee delivery boy, and I just delivered some coffee to somebody. Then all of a sudden, I got held up at gunpoint, and there was a standoff, and every one of the civilians in that shop ran away for their lives, which was really cool. It felt really reactive in that way. And I could have attacked this guy back and killed him, or I could talk my way out of it, and that's what I chose to do. I persuaded him. But yeah, this really just feels like an open world game that is littered with stuff to do, and all of it is in your quest log. You can access it and just look through all of it, pick what you want to do. If you don't want to do something right now, it'll be there when you want to do it. It's that sort of thing. The final thing I want to touch on in my impressions here is the main story, and I don't want to spoil a shred, just a single thing for you guys, so you don't need to worry about that. So I'll talk in generalities here. Like, compared to other main stories in Skyrim, Fallout 4, I'm finding this one to be much more compelling. And it's something that Bethesda has talked about, you know, publicly, sort of diving into, like, what is all this? The, you know, existence of everything. Is there meaning behind it? So on and so forth. And that's really kind of what this game's main story is hitting at. I don't think they plan on solving that mystery or answering that for us. I think that would be a little strange, but the way that it's going about it and the way it kind of pulls you through the galaxy to interesting places and the more scripted mission beats, the story missions, are really something in this game. I think they're actually some of the highlights of this game, which is not something I could say about previous Bethesda games. And there's those like, oh shit moments, the things that you don't expect, and then they happen, you're like, wait, did that really just happen? So it really hits this nice mix of unexpected while also just delivering a really solid narrative. And again, we'll see as I play more of this story if it keeps up the same pace, but so far I'm really digging it. Wow, guys, I didn't expect for this video to be this long, but here we are. Those are my first impressions on Starfield after several dozen hours. I really don't feel, I mean, I'm only level 20. I don't feel like I'm anywhere close to the end of the game. I feel like I'm still, not just scratching the surface, but let's do a swimming pool analogy. I've got 2 feet in the water. I'm in the experience. I'm still discovering new things. Things are still new for me, and I expect that they will be that way for a while now. I haven't seen everything there is to see, and I'm genuinely excited to keep playing. I've had this experience with only certain games recently where I really realize I'm enjoying myself so much. Number one is when I lose the hours. I've been losing hours to Starfield. I'll start a recording for this video, and then I'll check back, and I've been recording for 1 hour and 40 minutes, and I never do that. I'm always like very conscious of how long I'm playing a video game. I lose time. I lose track of time when I'm playing Starfield. Number two is when it does something that surprises me or is unexpected. So I have a lot of expectations for Starfield before I played the game, and they were exceeded and surpassed. And that is just something that, you know, it's depending on what you're expecting, it might be different for you. But for me, there were a lot of surprises, and things were better than I expected them to be. So yeah, guys, I hope that told you what you were looking for out of a first impressions, and I hope I gave you a good spoiler-free dive into what you should expect from Starfield. Like I said, it's a massive game. I'm really enjoying it so far, and if you decide to pick it up, I hope you enjoy it too. You can absolutely expect more videos of Starfield from me coming soon. I want to make some really like creative stuff, so don't expect something like right after this. It'll take me a few days to get back from this, along with a bunch of traveling that I'm doing. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. Also, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and hit the bell so you don't miss my next one. Thank you guys so much for watching this, and I will talk to you next time.